I'm here for your questions. So if you have a question about my Pelvic Floor Plus program, that is what I am here to answer today. So perfect. Chris just walked over. He can hear me. So if Chris can hear me, hopefully you can hear me. Ask me your personal questions, and I will also launch into some questions we've been getting a lot of. So the first thing I want you to know about Pelvic Floor Plus is that this is a keep forever program. So when you join us, you get it forever and you get any updates that I make. And just so you know, I'm a little crazy and I like updating my programs when I learn more stuff, and I'm always learning more stuff. So it's actually this year has some really exciting new updates to the program. Hi, Amanda. Hi, Maureen. Hi, Barbara. So this year, the updates I'm adding are, first of all, there's an awesome live event that we're going to do in about a week and a half, right after the program launches to start you off. And that's called Meet Your Pelvic Floor. And that's awesome because building awareness and connection to your pelvic floor area is the first step to getting stronger and more functional. So I'm extremely excited about that. That will live in the program and you will be sent a replay. And then I'm also adding a ton of new live bonuses this year. So everything from just a really concrete example of how to use what you learn in the program in your regular life, to a wonderful jaw release class that's getting some rave reviews, to some specific pelvic floor fascia release so you can unstick those tissues down there because they can get sticky, and then also some length and strength for your pelvic floor. Hey Lou, hey Kathy, hey Angela. So great new bonuses this year, but my point is that when you join the program, you get all the new bonuses that I ever put in. So it's awesome having Keep Forever programs. I've got a million of them myself. I highly recommend them if you decide to invest in online stuff, because when you keep it forever, you always get all the good stuff. Other questions I've been getting about the program. So first of all, some people have asked me how Pelvic Floor Plus compares to my Joints for Life program. Joints for Life is a program that is all about a maintenance plan for joint mobility. So literally like brushing your teeth, but for your joints. So that's very specific to keeping your joints working well, which is an awesome thing to do, but it doesn't teach you anything about how to move all day long. So what Pelvic Floor Plus does is it actually helps you build what I think of as movement skill. So in Pelvic Floor Plus, you're going to learn things like different breathing techniques and different core strength techniques that are really helpful for keeping your pelvic floor working better. And you're also going to learn things like better capacities at walking and squatting, and even at a little bit of hanging, like from the monkey bars, but really accessible. And the reason that those skills are in there are because those are the all-day movement skills that will help you have a really healthy pelvic floor. So lots of exercises too, but lots of skill building, which does not happen so much in my Joints for Life program. And then also some of my Take 10 members, so the membership program that I have been asking me about the differences. And Take 10 and Pelvic Floor Plus have quite a lot of crossover because I try to put everything into Take 10. But Take 10 is literally everything. And Pelvic Floor Plus is more focused and more Keep Forever. So we already mentioned that. So if you get Pelvic Floor Plus, what you're going to learn is basically a movement skill foundation and really like kind of all the essentials that you need to have a more friendly for your pelvic floor movement filled life. So it's the starter program. So I created it really for two reasons. One was to help solve and resolve pelvic floor issues, and one was to help you become a better mover for your whole entire life. And the reason that I did it that way is because those two things are the same. And the reason they're the same is because your pelvic floor is so much it's central to how we move. So I think what people don't always understand is that the pelvic floor muscles, so there's really a tiny group of pelvic floor muscles. They're not very big, but they form kind of the bottom of your core canister in between the bones of your pelvis. So in between your pubic bone and your tailbone, there's kind of a hammock of muscles, and those muscles are supposed to keep stuff inside you, but also to help you control pressure in your core, control stability, and to allow freedom of movement in your lower body. Meanwhile, your pelvis is supposed to absorb shock and allow for force transfer between your legs and your upper body. So when things start going wrong down there, it's almost always a symptom of a bigger movement issue. So it's kind of ground zero for movement. So whether there's an issue in your lower body with, for example, your feet. Hey, Linda. Hey, Jennifer. Woody. Okay, so yeah, pelvic floor, super important. So you're going to often see when you have a pelvic floor issue that you may have a related foot issue, knee issue, hip issue, maybe a non-optimal walking technique, maybe, hi Andrea, I'd love to see you. I'm surprised you're awake. Maybe you don't get a lot of squatting in your life because most of us don't. Some stuff can happen in your lower body that's going to affect how well your pelvic floor is functioning. And that happens to a ton of us because of modern lives. So our pelvic floor wasn't really, designed to handle being in chairs and shoes all the time. So I work a lot in the program on helping to restore those lower body capacities and skills so that as you walk, for example, you're better able to absorb shock so that your pelvic floor doesn't have to take too much shock, or so that your hips can rotate better, which is awesome because it helps your hips feel better and work better, but it also is really foundational to how well your pelvic floor works. So that's the ground up perspective. But you also have to think about top down. And the reason for the top down perspective is because your pelvic floor is a, component of your core. And your core has many functions in your body, but those include things like breathing and creating stability when you move. So when your core is not working optimally, what will tend to happen for your pelvic floor is that a lot of pressure can get pushed onto those tissues. So one good example, if any of you have done my rib cage magic freebie, so when we lift our ribs all the time, very common habit, that's like kind of our good posture habit. When we lift our ribs all the time, what happens is the back of our body gets really compressed. When the back of our body gets compressed, we push a lot of pressure forwards when we breathe and when we use our core. And that forward pressure can create a diastasis recti, but it can also create incontinence. It can also create prolapse. It can lead to sort of like a very rounded lower belly. So that rib lifting, which you think is maybe a good posture, actually has a lot of carry-on effect on the pressure systems in our upper body, which has carry-on effect on the pelvic floor. So the way the program actually works is we start with the upper body, because the first thing to do is let's stop overloading our pelvic floor. Let's get those pressures normalized so that your pelvic floor muscles, if they need to, can recover from all that pressure. And then we move to the lower body stuff where we start really working on strengthening and working on kind of the movement environment where your pelvic floor lives. So it's a 12-week program, but you can certainly do it for more time than that. Hi again, Courtney. So sorry about losing you there before. You start with the upper body so that you're in this better environment. That should take about 6 weeks, but it could totally take you 12 weeks. That's fine. You can spend as much time with the work as you need to, because a lot of this is repatterning and learning movement skills. Hi, Liddy. And so what I mean by repatterning is, for example, many of us like to breathe into our bellies. And if we want to change our breath pattern, hey, Carmen, we need to practice breathing differently. And that takes two things. One is we need the mobility to breathe differently, so that's exercises. And one is we need the pattern to breathe differently, so that's neurological, that's brain. And so that means you may need to practice that for a while. And maybe that takes you 2 days, and maybe that takes you 6 months, and everyone's going to be a bit individual. But for most people, repatterning can take a couple of months. So that's normal. It's just a slow thing. It's not the most fun. But it is literally just being human. So the program is very flexible and self-guided and self-paced to allow for that. Now, I'm not seeing any of you actually asking me questions here, so I hope I'm not missing your questions. Put them in the comments if you are asking them, because right now I'm just answering questions that I made up. I didn't make them up. I've been getting questions. Hi, Ellen. So I'm going to just open up a different view of this in case I can see it a little bit more easily. It's going to be trippy. I'll be seeing me talking to myself, I suppose. Okay, hi, Christy. Okay, issues. You've lost a lot of flexibility and mobility. And you've never connected that stiffness with your pelvic floor issues. So you're doing the program for so many reasons: sore shoulders, sore lower back, lack of hip mobility, lazy glutes, and to get your squat back. Okay, so you're doing the program for all the right reasons, or the wrong reasons, because I'm sorry that you have to go through that. I mean, I started teaching this stuff because I went through so much of this stuff myself with my own body. It's super common, right? Because so many of us are trapped by our culture in movement ways that we literally don't even understand. Okay, awesome, Amanda. I'm glad I was able to answer that for you. I mean, they're both great, though. I think they're both awesome, but you should get the one that meets your needs and your goals right now. And you'll do a lot of mobility work in Pelvic Floor Plus. It's just not so much the cars. There's lots of ways to be mobile. So, you know, we get trapped in these movement patterns, and a lot of us share them. So because we've all worn shoes with a raised heel, so even if, you know, you've worn running shoes your whole life, did you know that, like, I think it's Vans or Converse, they actually hide a heel rise so you don't even see it in their sole, but it's there. And that's pushing your body forward all the time. That's shortening and tightening your pelvic floor and stopping you from walking properly. Meanwhile, we all sit in chairs a lot, and many of us don't move a whole lot. And then when we do move, we often move in these very intense ways. So for our body, that's a lot to throw at our bodies. And so what we get are compensation patterns. And it's super common, right? Like, our bodies are awesome. You know, if you say, reach for something, then your body will reach. But if you don't have shoulder mobility, it can't use your shoulder, so it'll use your spine. And then you end up with that low back issue, but you also have that rib flare issue, and now you've got a pelvic floor issue because of that forward pressure. So it's like super connected, and no one is putting together those pieces enough. So that's literally what I've tried to do, is to help you put together the pieces as much as possible. Okay, Arizona, you read that our feet are involved with the pelvic floor and some exercises. Do I cover the same exercises in my foot program? That's a really good question. My foot program is a little older, so what I have in Pelvic Floor Plus is fewer foot exercises, and the ones that I have are focused mostly on mobility and rotation. And the reason for that, like the foot-specific exercises, I've got some big toe stuff too for the people who need big toe stuff, but I'm not going to make everyone do big toe exercises in there. When it comes to our pelvic floors, a lot of what is happening in our pelvic floor is because of limitations in rotation that travel between our feet and our hips. So when we walk, it doesn't look like it, but there's a lot of kind of internal to our feet and legs rotation that's happening. And if that rotation isn't happening, then the hip muscles that form a part of the pelvic floor are getting shortchanged. So literally some of your hip rotator muscles literally functionally are part of your pelvic floor, part of keeping stuff inside you. If those never rotate, or if they're always stuck in one position, they don't work that well. And so we really need rotation. Now, if we're walking in a way that is reflecting stiff feet, you're not going to get that rotation. So in Pelvic Floor Plus, I have the foot exercises that I think are going to be best at giving you back midfoot mobility to get that rotation back. And the technical term is supination and pronation, which is just such a huge part of walking. So the foot program has way more foot exercises. It does have some of the pronation and supination work, but Pelvic Floor Plus has newer pronation and supination work, and it is more specifically chosen to affect pelvic floor stuff than to affect foot stuff broadly. So there is for sure crossover, but Pelvic Floor Plus is also a much fresher, newer program. So, I mean, you're never going to go wrong. I like that. As long as you do the exercises with this stuff, I think your body's going to benefit. The question is, how can we make a program that you'll actually do, and how can we make it meet your goals as fast as possible? So I hope that answers your question, but feel free to drop in again if not. So Rhonda, you've got a referral for Pelvic Floor PT, which starts mid-August. Will that complement Pelvic Floor Plus, and should you do it first and then your course? So that's a really good question. I definitely encourage anyone who feels like they could benefit from Pelvic Floor PT to do it, and it should be really complementary. So a Pelvic Floor PT usually will do some assessment to tell you whether you have a tight pelvic floor or whether your pelvic floor is tight in certain areas. They may do some internal work to help you release the parts that are tight. And often they'll sort of teach you how to do pelvic floor exercises in a way that improves your awareness of them. So they might do internal work so that you can actually feel a correct pelvic floor engagement, for example. What I think Pelvic Floor PT won't do that you will get in the program is that big picture. So I do a lot of work, for example, on helping you understand sitting alignment and standing alignment, and encouraging you to spend more time sitting on the ground in ways that are right for your body. So big picture, PT tends to spot treat, which can be super helpful, but I think for a really comprehensive big picture, you probably want that like bird's eye view. So it depends to a little bit on kind of what you like to do and you're interested in. But I know that I've been to many PTs, including pelvic floor PTs, and for me, it's this kind of bigger picture movement piece that has made more sense. Another way to think about what I teach is totally as nutrition. So if you think about your diet, you know that even if you're eating, kale Caesar salads all the time, those might be healthy, but if all you ever eat is kale Caesar salads, you're not going to end up very happy at the end of the day. That's not going to be good for you because it's too limited. A PT is going to be like, oh, you know what? You are turning green because of your Caesar salads. Let's give you exercises to make you less green. Let's give you some, different food to make you less green. We're going to give you some bread and some steak. And I'm going to be like, wait, kale, bread, and steak, that's not enough. You also need to have some fruit and some oats and some like milk. So I'm like all about giving you much more varied movement diet and a much more, hopefully human appropriate movement diet than most of us have had. And again, it's not anyone's fault. We're all the product of our culture, but we have a culture that has really limited our movement options from the day one. So I'm trying to give you a program that will gently restore your capacities and help you do more of the stuff that your body quite literally evolved to do. So I think that's the difference between this and PT. I think they're highly complementary. I don't think that you would need to wait to start the program. And I think you could dive right in, and I think you'll find it complementary to the PT work. So Anu, nice to see you, by the way. Pelvic Floor Plus has almost nothing in common with Hip Hip Hooray. So Hip Hip Hooray was Kinstretch. So just for those of you who aren't aware of it, the CARS and Joints for Life that I teach are part of a mobility system. The mobility system starts with CARS, but it goes on to all kinds of other mobility work. It's best in class for creating mobility, but it's very intensive and kind of athletic. So Hip Hip Hooray was a product I created that was just teaching that type of mobility work. That's not really where my heart lies. What I really like using is grabbing some of the tools from the mobility work and then helping you use them for the best, fastest results for solving your particular movement needs. So I have a few of the kind of pails and railsy type tools, the active stretching in Pelvic Floor Plus, but I would definitely not even see it as similar to Hip Hip Hooray, actually. Almost nothing in common. All right, Rhonda, you have a hip and opposite knee replacement, and how does that play into the pelvic floor? So that's a really good question. I don't know exactly in your case, obviously. I don't know why you have a hip replacement, but there's obviously a very close connection physically between the hip and the pelvis. So sometimes what happens is if our hips are not super functional, then you may see that the pelvic floor is not as functional as, that's not the way I want to put it. When we limit our hip movement, again, not through meaning to, but for example, it's totally normal in our culture to sit at work all day, sit in a dining room chair, and then sit in a sofa all day. That is limited hip movement. And so when we limit our hip movement, what we're limiting also in our pelvic floor is the amount that our pelvis moves and the amount of loads that are applied to the pelvic floor. Now, what actually happens, and this is crazy, what actually happens with our tissues when they don't move very much is they all start to stick and glue together. So when you hear people talk about fascia getting stuck, it's literally what has happened is that the connective tissue starts out as fairly fluid and slidey, and then it literally gets denser and gluier and stickier. So if you imagine a shirt that you pour glue on, and that glue dries out, that shirt, when you pull on it, it's not going to slide and glide and stretch the same way as it would before. And that happens to our tissues as well. So in our pelvic floor, if the fascia gets sticky, if the muscles don't get used much, if the stretching doesn't happen, then you're going to tend to see those muscles get weaker and less functional. So Rhonda, I don't know for sure, but my guess is that the same causes that could contribute to needing a hip replacement are also going to contribute to a lack of optimal movement around the pelvic floor. and can contribute to the pelvic floor not working as well as it might. Now that's a very high level overview, and I don't like to suggest a diagnosis because that isn't one, but that would be one way that could work together. It could also be happening again because there's a lack of rotation, and so many of us are missing rotation. So the nice thing is that, all of this work is great before, after, almost during a replacement. It's going to make your tissue stronger and healthier, whatever point you're at, whether you never need a replacement or whether you've already had a replacement. So it's good for kind of all bodies, and it's very modifiable. And Lois, I see we're now talking about knee replacement. So no squatting, you've got joints for life, you've already got pelvic floor plus. So, I would be doing a ton of knee cars, Lois. These knee cars will be awesome for you before and afterwards. So those are in joints for life. I would be thinking about quad strength also. So the foot clocks that are in Pelvic Floor Plus. So Pelvic Floor Plus has some general balance and mobility work for walking, and that happens to be really good for strengthening the muscles around the knees. Also, I would be doing a fair bit of hamstring strengthening and lengthening. So the double calf stretch, Lois, would be really nice for you, because that's going to, when you think about knee stuff that gets complicated. It's almost like pelvic floor stuff. I'm probably going to make a knee course at some point because they're really interesting to work with. But you want to think about the environment of the knee. So the stuff that crosses over it. So that's your calves, your hamstrings, your inner thighs. So there's lots of calf, hamstring, inner thigh stuff in the program. You're also going to want to think about your feet and your hips, because those affect how well your knees can work. So lots of the rotational stuff. And also you're going to want to think about just straight up strength and muscle around the quads, especially the thighs, but also the hamstrings and inner thighs. So Lois, I would say your biggest things are, you should be thinking about making sure you've got hips over heels alignment nailed, because having our pelvis pushed forward all the time, that will affect both your knees and your pelvis. And I think actually all of the work in the lower body course that works for you, that you don't need to modify, or you can go ahead and modify it, but I just mean, you don't need to do full squats, but the whole lower body program is going to be awesome prep work for a knee replacement, and it will help you recover so much faster. But definitely the rotation piece too, the pronation drill. You can shoot me a message, Lois, and I'll give you some specifics, because there are some specifics, but the whole lower body program will be awesome for you. Okay, Lou, do internal strengthening devices work? And does my program work with those who try them too? Okay, so I don't know what working means in this sense, right? So what you might mean by working is that, does squeezing on a thing internally make you better at squeezing on a thing internally? And I would say yes, probably. I think an internal feedback device can be really useful. So one thing a lot of us struggle with, and I think I started this talk with, is that we don't always feel our pelvic floors very well. So that's why the free bonus for this live is going to be all about feeling and sensing and connecting to our pelvic floor, because you can't change what you can't feel. So a device like a pelvic wand can help you feel and sense a pelvic floor contraction in a way that maybe you haven't experienced before. So if your goal is improving sensory feedback, I think an internal device could be very useful, and a pelvic wand would be the type of device I would tend to recommend for that. The reason that I'm not wholeheartedly in favor of having a device is that, one of the things a device is going to do potentially is teach you how to do a really good Kegel, to teach you exactly what part of your pelvic floor you're engaging and how well and where and how strong. So that's not a bad thing, but a Kegel is like the smallest part of what you want to think about when you're working on your pelvic floor, because your pelvic floor is so much more meaningful than just doing a squeeze. Your pelvic floor has to deal with things like when you sneeze, you're putting a ton of downward pressure on your pelvic floor. So it does have to squeeze up. It has to protect against that pressure. But your pelvic floor also has to work when you are, say, squatting down and it's lengthening. So anything that's just teaching you to squeeze is not teaching you how to get strong when you lengthen. And so that's the advantage of doing bigger picture exercises, because you will learn how to lengthen. A Kegel often is also used as a pre-bracing strategy. So say you're concerned about leakage, you could do a bit of a Kegel before you sneeze, and that might prevent you from leaking when you sneeze. So I am all for a little bit of pre-bracing if it makes your life better. But I don't love the idea of learning how to do it and focusing on that all the time as your kind of go-to. And the reason for that is mostly that your body is smart. Your body can figure things out. So a little pre-bracing to teach yourself the pattern, and if you're really worried and you definitely don't want to pee when you sneeze, is a great tool. But in the end, I'd like to move away from pre-bracing and help you learn to move your body by itself naturally so that your body is fully able to respond to whatever happens in your life without you having to think about Kegling. So I think that those internal devices might have some value, and I'm not, anti using them, but I don't think that they're necessarily a complete answer. So let me know if that makes sense. I'm happy to talk about that more. These are great questions. I love it. Bring me more questions. All right, Emma, Joe, Rex, Patty, Samantha. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions from you guys, so I will continue with my list of questions, but please write me your questions down. I'm 100% here for you right now. So bring it on. I love answering questions. It's my favorite. I think it's a great program. I do all of these exercises often. You're going to find one of my bonuses in there is my personal bedtime routine, which shows you kind of how I use some of the exercises in my daily life to both work on my own personal stuff and to, and my personal pelvic floor stuff, but also to, counteract screens and keyboards, because there's a lot of nice upper body work that opens up some of the tight spots that we all share. Okay, Jamie, you have pelvic floor stuff and knee stuff and plantar fasciitis. Yes, I think it will help all of those things. There's no guarantees because there are other reasons for plantar fasciitis that are not necessarily covered in the course. But plantar fasciitis is an overload issue. The main reasons most of us sort of have that plantar fasciitis overload issue are weak, stiff feet, are standing with our hips forward of our heels, and our tight back lines, so tight calves, tight hamstrings. So those will 100% be covered in the program, including the kind of the pronation, supination. Jamie, I don't know if you were here when I was talking about that, but that's really midfoot mobility. And that midfoot mobility, when you get it, is often really, really helpful for your plantar fasciitis as well as everything else. So what you're suggesting, there's pelvic floor stuff, there's knee stuff, there's foot stuff. The lower body program is going to specifically address all of those. I still would like you to start with the upper body program because you want to change those upper body loading strategies before you think about the lower body, what's the right word? The lower body function, because sometimes it can be, the forward standing is one that I see in 99% of people just out on the street. I've got a new YouTube on that I'll post in the group just as a follow-up. But that standing strategy that we often have is really related to overload in our pelvic floor, or tightness in our pelvic floor and overload in our feet. So I'm going to post that for you all just in case, and that'll give you a good sense of the kind. So when I talk about this being all day, everyday movement, I'm not just talking about do exercises all day, although you can, and that's not a bad idea. But I also want you to start thinking about how you move all day, because, it looks like a small change, changing, the position of your pelvis from 2 inches ahead of your heels to right over your heels. But to your body, that's a big change, and that could be a huge change for both your feet and your pelvic floor. So walking on the outside of your feet, I'm guessing that the pronation work would be really helpful for you. You can always grab a couple of the exercises from the lower body program if you want to really tackle that first, and I can tell you which ones. So I guess one thing that you should know is I really try to stay involved in my courses. I'm here for you as a teacher. I teach online mostly because that's my life. I travel a lot. I don't have a single place where I live right now, but what I like about teaching is getting to support you. And I feel like it's really part of my mission to make sure that I'm available to you. I've taken a lot of online programs, And I like it when I have teachers who answer my questions. So I'm here to help you customize the program and to help you understand anything that's not clear whenever you need. So that's important to me, and you can reach out anytime. So we've got a Facebook group that's really awesome. I like it when people post in the Facebook group, if you're on Facebook, which presumably you are since you're here. And that's nice because then you can really share then the answers I post can be shared with everybody else in the program. But hi, Beverly. If you want to do it privately, you can email me anytime. You can get in touch privately anytime. I am always, always here for you. So lots of ways to get in touch. So yeah, I would say no guarantees, but you are likely to find that the work in the program will help you with knees, with feet. You should feel like your hips are feeling better. You should feel like your shoulders are feeling better. You should feel like your spine is feeling better. It's very whole body, and it's very gentle also. And I made it all super knee friendly. So there's nothing where you have to go down onto your knees on the floor. There's always an alternative. I made a knee friendly option for every single kneeling / hands and knees exercise in the program. And one of my great success stories is my amazing student Lee. And she was awesome because she had such painful knees that she couldn't go on the floor when she first started. And now her knees are totally fine and she squats all the time. So there's some really great success stories. So that's awesome. One thing I should say also is that, with this work, it will serve you well to do it enthusiastically. So this is certainly when I discovered it, I was like, oh my God, this stuff is amazing. I'm going to do it a ton. So I did it a ton and I got some really quick results. So that's always a good idea. But I also understand that life is what it is. So I've made the program so that I'm asking you to do 4 classes a week, and the classes are about 20 to 30 minutes long. You will get more results out of that if you also think about those all day, everyday movement habits. So for example, a little bit of floor sitting, a little bit of working on your standing, a little bit of personal practice. So I definitely recommend at least some of that, but try to make all that extra stuff as doable as possible. So, it's always this fine line, because the most important thing is that you do something. And then also, the more you do, the more your body will respond. So it's all about finding that nice, happy place where you're doing what you can, where you're progressing, where you're being consistent, and then you're going to get some great changes. Val, that's awesome. I'm super happy to hear you're working on the cars. They're an amazing tool, aren't they? They're really great. I think I've been doing them for about 6 years now, maybe 5.5. And I'm certainly not planning to stop anytime soon. Darlene, I hope you decide to join you. I think it's amazing work. Like, it changed my life for sure. When I remember I took a running course because I was getting all kinds of foot issues from my running. So I had plantar fasciitis too. So I should say I totally solved my plantar fasciitis from doing this work. And what changed it for me was 100% changing how I stand. So when you change how you stand, that often means working on your hip flexors, working on your hamstrings, having some awareness. It's kind of a few different things to think about, dropping my ribs down. So that was huge for me, but that's how I solved my plantar fasciitis. But anyway, so when I did this running course, they had you look down, standing up. I'm sorry, I forgot my tripod and my computer's not working because my life is crazy right now. So I apologize for the holding my phone part of this thing. But anyway, I'll see if I can show you. So when I would look down like this, like straight down, I wouldn't see my feet. So I'd be standing like this. My feet would be totally covered by my body because of how I was holding my hips. So can you see how I'm changing where my hips are forward, my hips are back? That change is huge. And I think many people need that change. And that's one of those huge game changer changes that can change a lot of pelvic floor stuff. So that's not a change you necessarily can make full time just by moving your pelvis around, because you also have to help your body adapt. But that's what the exercises are for. So the exercises are there to help you get the adaptations. So see, darling? Okay, super common, right? It's so common, and people don't even know it's a thing. But when you stand forward like that, you're inadvertently keeping your low back and your pelvic floor in a very compressed position, the posterior pelvic floor. And when that's compressed, it can't do its thing properly. That pushes more pressure forward. So that's how that can contribute to incontinence or prolapse even, and also diastasis recti. And so getting that weight back into your heels is a way that you can start to normalize the length of the tissues. And when those tissues normalize, it means less forward pushed pressure. It also means stronger tissues because they can work at a better length for themselves. So it's super crazy stuff. And super interesting because our bodies will kind of just heal themselves when you give them the chance to. I'm going to sit down. I never sit down. So it's an exciting opportunity. Make my desk go down too. Okay. So please keep asking your questions. I'm loving all of them. And if I haven't answered your question yet, please don't be shy. This is a no questions barred arena. But I thought I would mention the equipment that's needed for the program. So the most important thing to know is that the first part of the program is a foundations module, and you don't really need any equipment for the foundations module except for maybe, what am I going to say? A plumb line or like a string with your keychain attached, because that's how you're going to measure. Oh, I'm lying to you. It's the upper body program you start with. You don't even need that. You need a chair, a flat-seated chair. And you just watch the videos. The live workshop that we're going to do, we're going to need to have a flat-seated chair and a rolled up towel and maybe a squishy ball of socks. So not very much stuff, maybe a folded blanket. And then the rest of the program, there's a full equipment list. There is an equipment list on the sales page, and I can post a link to that for you also. You probably can substitute home stuff for most of the equipment, but I will say that my favorite pieces are the half round foam rollers and the squishy Pilates balls, and you'll do yourself a big favor if you have those. So I'm going to post in the group the equipment list and a couple of notes, and then you can check that if you're concerned about the equipment. But you'll be a few weeks before you need any of it anyway, so, and it's all substitutable. I put substitutes into the list. All right. Hi, Morgan. Okay. You have gone from being super physical, cycling, yoga, and walking, and then 3 years working at home in a chair. And now motivation is a challenge too, because of course it is, because you can get into kind of your habits, right? Our bodies are really good at habits. Which program would I recommend for a beginner? So both Joints for Life and Pelvic Floor Plus are beginner friendly. Like they are designed for people who do not have a background in movement. I mean, it depends partly on your goals, a lot on your goals. And I really struggle. I struggle with the idea of motivation. So like, I get it. I struggle with it too, right? Like everybody has these things that they'd like to do that they struggle with. The way I think about it is that what you do with this stuff is you come back to it again and again until it sticks, and you just try it in ways that work for you. So I've designed both programs, both Joints for Life and Pelvic Floor Plus, to be as accessible as possible and as doable as possible. And I keep the classes short, and I give you ideas you can do at home. And we've got a great supportive Facebook group because many people struggle with actually doing this stuff. But it's the actually doing the stuff that is where I would be thinking for you. Is not which is going to be good for you, because they're both going to give you physical benefits. They're both going to work well for your body. They will both get you moving in ways you might not be right now. It's more, what can you see yourself doing? So Joints for Life is teaching you a routine that you do every day, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes once you know the routine. And Joints for Life teaches you that week by week until you know the whole thing, and then you get to practice on your own. So I like that for Joints for Life because it's such a great routine, kind of like brushing your teeth, but for your joints. Pelvic Floor Plus is more technical, I guess you could call it. There's more exercises in Pelvic Floor Plus. And that's awesome because that's more movement nutrition, and it will cover a lot more reasons for issues through your whole body that affect your pelvic floor. But it makes it harder to learn and practice on your own. So the way I've set it up is, it seems a little confusing when you first dive in, but I thought it was really important because I think it's more accessible this way. So the way I did it was, for each day of exercise, you have 2 types of classes. First, you get an exercise by exercise breakdown. So if I'm teaching, say, 5 classes or 5 exercises, you're going to get exercise 1, exercise 2, exercise 3, all the way to 5. And you can just practice and learn those exercises in detail, which is important because details matter with this stuff. But then when you're trying to decide what to do after you've done those classes, like a one time through, you can either remember the exercises and just do the exercises, listening to some music or to a book, or else you can follow me teaching you in a flow class. So whichever is more motivating for you, can you remember the exercises and do them and listen to your music, or do you want to watch me sort of walk you through it? You get to pick. And for me, that's helpful. So I've done programs that have been set up that way. And for me, that's great because a lot of the time I just want to listen to my music or my audiobook and I don't want to hear a teacher talking. So I've given you that option. But if you're a person who wants to hear me talking, then I've given you that option also. So Morgan, I don't know, does that answer your question? I would say if I really had to pick based on what you're describing, like I would do the faster, easier one. And then if that works for you, I would think about the longer, harder one. So I would probably go Joints for Life, but only if it meets your other goals. Does that help? Let me know. Okay. Samantha, those are amazing bunnies. Okay. Wow. Some good questions have been coming in. Hang on. I just want to make sure I'm not missing any. Okay. Carol, you have spinal stenosis and you're missing some cartilage from previous surgery. You have tight hips and something in your medial glute. Will my program be helpful? You do strength training 4 times a week. Helpful for what exactly, Carol? Like as in, can you do the program or what are you trying to, what would your goals be to achieve? Morgan, yeah, you're not alone, Morgan, for sure. Veretta. You started cars 2 weeks ago. Yeah, okay. So, you will get probably 1 or 2 exercises in the cars program that are also in Pelvic Floor Plus because the spinal mobility section is in both because spinal mobility is really important for core strength and for upper body alignment. Apart from that, there's no crossover. So they're very different programs. I have quite a few people who are in both. Like they're very complementary. You're not going to go wrong doing cars. What cars are, like again, they're like brushing your teeth, but for your body. So cars make you better at everything. And Pelvic Floor Plus helps you understand kind of the foundations of technical movement. So I guess, how can I put that? Cars are going to help you do whatever you're doing better. And Pelvic Floor Plus is going to help you do specific things in better ways. That's not really explaining very well. Say, for example, you want to go for a walk. If you do some cars before you go for a walk, your body will be more aware of, or your brain will be more aware of your body. You're going to walk more smoothly and with more control. If you do Pelvic Floor Plus before you go for a walk, like if you've done the Pelvic Floor Plus, you are also going to have more hip stability and more foot capacity, more rotational capacity in your feet and more counter rotation in your rib cage. So there's a bigger picture lens from Pelvic Floor Plus. This is by no means the only time you can start the program. You can start the program anytime at all. This is literally just a sale. It's a good deal for the program, and the live bonus is going to be amazing. It's a super good bonus. It will live in the program as a non-live class. So if it's not the right time for you, Pelvic Floor Plus will still be around. It's just a really good time to join the program because it's a great deal. So, Veretta, what you could do is you could purchase the program and start it when you're ready, or you could decide to wait and purchase it later when you are also ready, and either would work. Another thing to tell you is that we send out, we call them onboarding emails. So if you join the program, and every week or so, I'm going to send you an email every couple of weeks, just reminding you where you could be in the program and what you should be working on and what you should be thinking about, sort of help you stay on track. Now, if that's awesome for you, then we'll send you the emails. If that annoys you, we will stop sending you the emails. And if you're not ready to start yet, we can put those emails on pause. So that's something good to know about the program also. Susan, stiffness and pain in your foot with the bunion. Would you be better with the foot program or the pelvic floor program? I think for that, I would probably go foot program. I think if you're really working with a lot of foot stuff, then foot is the way to go. Good question. Morgan, I think your age is just a number when it comes to movement, mostly. Menopause obviously is going to affect our collagen and our joint, well, the collagen in our joints. So it tends to exacerbate discomfort and it makes pelvic floor issues worse when we hit menopause. What is also true is that you can make amazing changes at any age. And many of my best students, like the students who are getting the best results, are in their 70s. So there's no ceiling to being able to make amazing changes with your body. So it's really just, are you ready to? Is this a good time for you? I hate advising people to buy the program and then not use it for a while, but that's always an option. I personally tend to collect programs and then I get to them when I get to them. But you can also wait until you're absolutely ready to go. Buying things because there's a sale isn't necessarily the right timing for you as a human. So you've got to make that call. And I certainly don't want to pressure anybody into making a sale. I want you to make the right decision for you. But either program is going to be awesome for your body. It's just which program do you think feels like a better fit for you to do personally right now? Darlene, I'm excited about it for you. It is awesome. It's very exciting that you're going to join us. Okay, Lois, you've got an S-curve scoliosis. Yes, I bet that would make trunk rotation difficult, and it would definitely challenge golfing. I'm not a scoliosis expert. There's a lot of twisting in the program because twisting is so good for your core, so good for helping kind of reset those muscles and for just improving the function of your core, which also decreases that pressure on your pelvic floor and helps it work better. It's all modifiable. So if it doesn't feel good to you, you can modify or skip the parts that are rotational. But the point of the program is definitely not scoliosis specific. So there might be a better resource for you if that's your main goal. Thanks, Loretta. Sam, if you are carrying a bunch of extra weight, I think it'd be great for you to do. Yes. I do try to make all the exercises as accessible for different body types as possible. And I'm always here to help you get modifications if I fail to give you one in the program. So if you need extra ideas, you can reach out anytime. So yes, I think that there's no contraindication there. Sarah, will the program help with bowel issues like dyssynergia? I actually don't know what dyssynergia is, so I don't know. It certainly can help with things like fecal incontinence or erectile prolapse. It can help with digestive issues, and a large part of that is that whole upper body alignment piece again. So, it often comes back to just like standing forward, a lot of us rib lift, and this is not a great position for the core muscles, which also affect our digestive muscles. So rib dropping on its own can improve digestion. Also, a lot of us carry a lot of tension in our abs. Either we're always squeezing our abs or we're sucking in our stomach. Also super not great for bowel and digestive issues. So that can make a big difference for digestive stuff. And then finally, again, that twisting, that gentle work with the abs, that can certainly help the sort of whole core work better, and that can include digestion. But again, if you can explain it more to me, I can give you a better guess. But that's new to me. Hi, Helen. Okay, more questions. I'm ready. You're asking so many good ones. I'll take advantage by having a sip of water. All right, I'm not seeing any more come up right now. I'll give you a little bit more time. Helen, that's a great question. You're hoping it will help with relaxing the pelvic floor. Do I have information regarding vaginismus? Sorry, that was a hard one to say. 100% there's going to be so much help with relaxing the pelvic floor. So hypertonicity, like extra tension in the pelvic floor, that's a huge issue for 99% of us. A lot of what, so Andrea, you're right on point with your question there. Andrea is asking how I see emotional stresses affecting our bodies. Our pelvic floors are exceptionally sensitive to emotional stress. We literally clench them when we're scared and stressed. So hello, modern world, right out of the starting gate, a lot of us are going to have that as an input that's not helpful for our pelvic floor health and function. for many people, the route to adding more relaxation is going to be through breathing, and I don't really want to say stretching, but I might say stretching and release. So we have the live bonus is going to be all about awareness, and awareness is going to be all about breathing into the pelvic floor, feeling the pelvic floor, and learning how to stretch and lengthen the pelvic floor by moving the pelvic bones. So the pelvis, the big sort of bony stuff you see on a skeleton, is actually made up of kind of two large bony components, the right side of the pelvis, the left side of the pelvis. Those are jointed. So they can move relative to themselves. Not very much, but a bit. So when you start those guys moving properly, you start being able to stretch out your pelvic floor in ways that it really likes. So many of us have posterior pelvic floor, especially, that's really gripped. So that's something that you can work on in all kinds of ways, positionally, by learning how to kind of spread your tail feathers a little bit. And then we're going to add breathing to that. And we're going to add fascia release to that. So learning how to self-massage for release and letting go of those tensions, learning stretches for that, and learning physical movements for that. So 100% working on relaxing, feeling, sensing, stretching, all of those things. I've also got a really cool new exercise that I just learned, this nerve gliding for some of the most important pelvic floor muscles. So one of the things that can cause a lot of pelvic floor pain is actually, it's really interesting, although probably not that awesome if you're experiencing it. But our nerves are surrounded by blood vessels and connective tissue. And when everything gets tight down there, what actually happens is our bodies struggle to, what's the right word? Blood starts to pool around the veins. So blood gets kind of stuck around our nerves in our pelvic floor. So it's really important to start clearing out that blood flow. That takes pressure off the nerves. Your pelvic floor starts feeling better. So again, that tightness, that tension, that lack of movement is a big problem. When you start bringing sort of gentle movement in, you'll often see that things start feeling better really quickly. So we are for sure going to be working on all kinds of ways to release tension and to create, I'm going to call it better tone. So the tone I want for your pelvic floor isn't a constant gripping. It's not totally relaxed. It's a responsive tone. It's something that changes if you pick up a water bottle and if you reach that water bottle away from you. And if you do a squat, I want your pelvic floor to respond differently to all of those loads. So that's what the goal is of looking for the program. And that is where you're going to see things start to feel better. Okay, so Sarah, I really don't know whether the program would affect dysynergia. Whoa, it's so hard to say, and then I just moved. Dysynergia. So I don't know. I don't know if that might be an interesting one simply to learn and see. Unfortunately, sometimes with specific conditions, you kind of have to explore. The way I think about a lot of this movement work, though, is that we're really restoring function, right? Most of us have some degree of compromised function, and most of us have symptoms that appear in different ways. So one person's going to have a sore knee, and somebody else is going to have a pelvic floor issue, and someone else is going to have migraines. Because humans are very complex systems, and we all have unique movement patterns and history, we have these pain issues that show up in different ways, but often all have sort of a similar root cause. And learning to move a little differently and explore new patterns is often helpful for so many things. I don't want to be overly magical here, but you just never really know until you start exploring with a lot of this stuff. So Andrea, how do I see emotional stresses affecting our bodies? So first of all, yeah, for sure, pelvic floor tension and gripping. One of the most interesting studies I've ever heard about was where they actually asked a bunch of women to watch horror movies, and they were all hooked up with EKGs, I think that's the word, the tension meters for their pelvic floor muscles. Is that EKG? I think it might be ECG. And when scary scenes came on, they all measured their pelvic floors just naturally tightened, even though they didn't notice that happening in their bodies. So stress is huge for pelvic floor tightness. But another thing that will happen for most of us, so this rib lifting habit that I keep talking about, so that could be your good posture. It could be also caused by the psoas muscles being quite tight. So the psoas muscles are a pair of muscles that go from the bottom of the rib cage down all the way onto our legs. And when we're stressed or when we sit in chairs a lot, those tend to get tight. And when they're tight, they try to find length. And one of the ways they can find length is because they run diagonally, is if they lift the low ribs forward like that, that actually gives them some slack on the back end of your rib cage. So stress will tend to show up as this short, tight psoas, which will show up as lifted ribs, which in turn is going to drive a lot of pressure forwards into the belly, into the front of the pelvic floor, into incontinence and prolapse potentially. So huge relationship between emotional stress and physical outcomes with pelvic floors. Anu, what does a pelvic floor dysfunction look like? That is a great question. I probably should have started the whole thing. Pelvis specific. There's all kinds of different diagnoses, but you're going to tend to see pain in the pelvic area. So that could be in the pubic symphysis. It could be in the genitalia region. It could be painful sex. It could be a painful tailbone. It could be SI joint pain, so around the sacrum where it meets the pelvis. Certainly incontinence, so fecal or urinary incontinence. Incontinence can happen in a couple of ways, but the main ones are stress. So that's if I sneeze or jump or run, and that pressure causes incontinence. There's also urge incontinence, which is when your nervous system gets overly triggered and makes you need to pee badly. So that could be triggered by practice, so you can train yourself to pee all the time, annoyingly. But it could be triggered by drinking irritating food, so a lot of caffeine, a lot of soda pop, a lot of alcohol that can cause a sort of a type of urge incontinence too. This program has helped some people with it, but it is, because it's more of a nervous system thing, I tend to focus more on stress incontinence than urgency, but it can absolutely impact urgency too. My student Deb, who we just put up a case study of her experience with the program, it's really helped her with urgency. So that's pretty cool. Because sometimes just connecting with our bodies better changes things. So that's one of the reasons, again, the live bonus is going to be all about awareness. And my bet is that a lot of people are going to find that their issues get better just from taking that class alone. Because I think that awareness is such a big piece of it. Of course, other people won't, and there can be a longer journey. Everyone is unique. Other pelvic floor dysfunctions. So prolapse is sort of the end state of a lot of pressure on our pelvic floor. Now that could be pressure from childbirth, but it can be pressure from how you breathe or how you use your core. So a lot of the time people will, without even knowing it, stabilize their core by holding their breath. So holding your breath, picking up your thing. If you're a weightlifter lifting really heavy weight, that's a recognized technique for creating stability. But if you're a human reaching for stuff in your daily life, that's a ton of pressure on your pelvic floor, not necessarily helpful for the long term. So you definitely are going to see prolapse pushing down as a pelvic floor related issue. Diastasis recti is where the abdominal muscles start to separate. That can happen in a relationship with pregnancy. I think it happens to most pregnant women for a while, but it tends to happen more because of that rib lifting, that forward pressure. Hernias are all pressure issues, and so I lump them in with pelvic floor issues in my own brain. And then you also get the weird stuff. So you get the related stuff. So where you have this pattern that can create both a pelvic floor issue and an issue somewhere else. So that would be, say, your core muscles aren't working as well or as coordinated as they could be. Sometimes your shoulder muscles will get really tired because they'll be what compensates for your pelvic floor. It sounds crazy, but there's literally studies about this. So you may see shoulder pain show up. You may see hip pain show up. You may see knee pain show up. You may see foot pain show up. And those are maybe causes, maybe the same thing that causes the pelvic floor problems is also causing those problems, or they may be the symptoms of whatever's happening that is creating the pelvic floor problem, if that makes sense. So it's quite broad. And again, that's why I like working with it, because it gives me a lot to explore and to help. So the good thing is if you have a whole constellation of those symptoms, a lot of this work is going to help you with many of them without even necessarily having to think about them individually. Okay, Morgan, I think Joints for Life and then Pelvic Floor Plus would probably be a good way to organize yourself, especially because then you can find out if you like how I teach, and that's important, because if you don't like how I teach, you're not going to do the classes. You should probably get to the stage of Joints for Life where you've learned the entire CARS series and can do it on your own without me before you start Pelvic Floor Plus. I think that's 12 weeks. I've set it out as a series where I teach you one CAR at a time, so one movement at a time. You learn your neck, you learn your upper back, you learn your shoulder blades, you learn your shoulders, and you go through it week by week. So you can choose to do it faster than that, but I've made it very kind of bit by bit to help it become easier for you. So I would say at the stage where you can remember the full CARS program and that's part of your personal schedule, and once that's a habit for you, I think that would be a good time to start something else. I don't know exactly what the timeline would be for you on that, but I'm going to guess 12 weeks. And I don't think you'll ever master Joints for Life in the broadest sense, because CARS are so cool. They're super, super modifiable, so that once you learn the basics, then you have an opportunity to add on by doing them in different body positions and adding weight. They're very versatile. So I don't think I've yet fully mastered the CARS. I think there's lots of runway for that. So they're a practice, and you just have to get to a kind of a comfort level in your practice, and then you can move on when you're ready. Okay, Sarah, I see what you're saying. Okay, so the pelvic floor muscles are uncoordinated. Yes. Okay, so Sarah's saying when you have pelvic floor dyssynergia, the muscles in your pelvic floor become uncoordinated, which makes it difficult to have a bowel movement. And she points out, and I agree, that the pelvic floor includes the muscles and connective tissues that support your bladder, rectum, and other pelvic organs. So that's a helpful description. I think that makes me more encouraged by what you could experience in the program, because there's so much about awareness and feeling and sensing. So, we're going to be working very specifically on helping your body and brain connect to your pelvic floor issues, which can be kind of a self reconnect. A lot of the time when we don't have good body-brain connection, things don't work that well. It's very common to have poor body-brain connection. That's all the time. So 99% of the people I meet cannot lift only their big toe and not their other toes. And if you haven't tried that exercise yet, you should give it a try right now. Are you able to just lift only your big toe on its own? If you can, then you're doing better than many people that I meet. And if you can't, that's okay, because you can get it back. So my point is that we can become uncoordinated, and the best way that I know to re-coordinate is to give yourself biofeedback and awareness time and reconnection time, and this course has tons of that. So will it work for sure? I have no idea, but is that a really good bet? I would say so. I would say it's about the best bet that I can think of movement-wise. Great question. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Andrea. All this stuff is so interesting. All right, twisting, Arizona. You're in PT for nerve pain in your right hip and 2 compressed mid-back vertebrae. No surgery advised at this time. You've had surgery on L4 and L5 and a paralyzed leg. Man, that sucks. And another back surgery in 1985. Will your current nerve problems with your hip caused from the compressed mid-back vertebrae? Is the twisting gentle? Yes, the twisting is gentle. This whole program is gentle. I will be there to remind you to keep things gentle. We're definitely not doing anything high speed. We're not doing anything loaded. It is always possible that it's not gentle enough. So if you know that it's an issue for your body, you can check with me. If you're not sure about an exercise, you can modify all the exercises to make them smaller and slower. So I think that you will find it helpful to get some movement in there, but I would ask you to be cautious if you decide to join. And then again, I'm here for you all the time, so I'm always available if you have some needs for me to kind of help you figure out what will work for you, what mods will work for you. And the other thing that a lot of people say they like, so the way we set it up in the program is each class has a discussion area. So each exercise, each class. And if you put your questions there, then other people can read the answers. And a lot of people have been saying they find the answers useful. So there's lots of support. Okay, Nancy, no problem. Take 10 member. I answered that one right at the very beginning. How much overlap is there? I think we have to get better at telling you earlier in the process how much overlap there is. So Take 10 is such a big program, and it's got kind of everything in it. So there is quite a lot of overlap. The biggest difference is that Pelvic Floor Plus overall, see, it's not even true because I just redid the Take 10 core and breathing section. So, there's huge overlap. The biggest difference between Take 10 and Pelvic Floor Plus is that Pelvic Floor Plus is more focused and it's got a different format. So it's more accessible if you feel overwhelmed by Take 10. So people who find that Take 10, the membership isn't working for them, Pelvic Floor Plus is a much more digestible program that's more focused and will help you resolve a problem with more specificity. And then you keep it forever so you can go back to it again and again. So as I was saying at the beginning, the nice thing about a Keep Forever program is that you literally can do it many times. My student Teresa has done Build Better Feet 3 or 4 times. I think she does it every year, and she says she always gets something out of it, and that's how she's interacted with my programs, is just finding the one that was most meaningful for her and doing it again and again. So that's the big difference between Pelvic Floor Plus and Take 10. Having said that, Pelvic Floor Plus is just leapfrog Take 10 because I put in some brand new classes based on my brand new learning. So it's got some stuff in it that Take 10 doesn't have because of that. And that's always going to be how it is also. There's never going to be perfect crossover or overlap because that just can't be. So they're different. I always suggest if you're not sure and you think you might be interested, you can always take the Pelvic Floor Plus you can take it for a test drive. So you can buy it and then you can return it with 0 questions asked after 30 days or before 30 days, not after 30 days. And then you can tell for yourself if it feels like a better fit for you. Thank you, Arizona. That's awesome. Yeah, that's super cool that you guys are doing it together. Chris and I do cars together all the time, and that is something that we really value doing together. So I love hearing that. Morgan, you're very welcome. I hope it was helpful for you. Anu, you've read that a tight pelvis means stuck energy and a rigid life. I don't know if I have an opinion on that, but I think tight and inflexible is never really what we want in our bodies. So I guess I can go with that. Rhonda, sorry, there was some background to that. So Rhonda's asking that I mentioned that I recommend doing CARS or Joints for Life before Pelvic Floor Plus. Is it truly necessary to do Joints for Life before Pelvic Floor Plus? No, absolutely not. That was the context, was that was Morgan who was asking which program would be better for her to start with. And she's starting from not being very active and she's not feeling very motivated. So I suggested she do Joints for Life first to see if it worked for her. And then she move on to Pelvic Floor Plus because it's a bigger program. So for her, I think it makes sense to do it that way. But if your goal is a pelvic floor goal, if you're interested in movement learning, if you're trying to resolve a pelvic floor problem, then you never have to do Joints for Life. They're independent programs. They work well together, but there's definitely no requirement to do them both. All right, Crystal. Oh, now everybody wants to know. Okay, no, I recommend doing Pelvic Floor Plus. If you're trying to resolve a pelvic floor problem, then Pelvic Floor Plus is totally the way to be. So the only reason that we talked about Joints for Life doing it first is because somebody was asking what program would be right for her particular situation, which was to get moving more and to feel less stiff and to start getting some movement in a life where she's become less motivated. If you're motivated, or if you're trying to resolve a pelvic floor problem, then 100% Pelvic Floor Plus was designed to help. And so we were talking a little bit about pelvic floor PT earlier as well. I'm really sorry that you haven't had any success with the PT approach. I think that with resolving movement problems, sometimes we have to be a little relentless and we learn each time. So I was talking to somebody in the Facebook group about movement learning, and sometimes you have to try a bunch of things, but they're all going to move you closer to your solution. So it's never wasted time. As long as you do the work, you're going to get some information. So for example, you might discover that you have a tight pelvic floor and maybe your PT never had you releasing your belly by rolling on a ball, and that can have a big impact. Or maybe you didn't work on breathing. I don't know what your PT did, so I'm just wildly speculating here. But the big picture, sometimes it's what's missing from the PT work. So yes, for anyone with a pelvic floor problem, start with Pelvic Floor Plus. You may never need to do joints for life, or you might choose to. That's totally up to you. All right, such good questions here. I am totally available to answer your questions for as long as possible, but I also want to respect your time, and I said that I was going to be on here for about an hour. So if you have more questions, I am here. I can stay on. And if you feel like your questions have been answered, that's awesome. And yeah, I'm super, super glad that you have decided to join me. I appreciate you spending the time. But also, any more questions, hit me up, because now is the time to ask. I will say that, I've tried to make Pelvic Floor Plus different than Joints for Life because I don't want all my programs to overlap. And because Take 10 is so big and it's got everything in it, that's the one that does overlap. So you could definitely do Pelvic Floor Plus and Joints for Life, and that's going to give you a pretty great introduction to everything. Hi, Claire. Okay, so I'm not seeing any more questions come up, but I'm going to give you another minute or two just in case. This is going to be annoying to repost the replay because unfortunately we lost the power for the first one, so we had to come back on. So there's going to be a double replay. I've been plagued by technical issues over the last few days, but I guess that's life. Crystal, yes, I am going to post the equipment list in the group so you can check it. Basically, to start the program, you don't need anything, or you need very little. A flat-seated chair and some folded blankets and cushions is how you can start out. For the live, you're going to need a rolled-up towel and a ball of socks, and maybe some more blankets. So super low pro on the equipment. Then when you get to the actual program, I do have a proper equipment list in there, and there are some specifics that I think you'll enjoy having. The most important ones are the half-round foam roller and a squishy Pilates-style ball. Everything can be substituted, though. Everything. So I've got substitutes for you in the equipment list, so I try to make it as versatile as possible. All right. Is your name actually Arizona, or is that your Facebook name? But if it's Arizona, that's super cool. If it's your Facebook name, that's super cool too. I hope so. I'd love to welcome you in here. Susan, I'm super glad it's helpful. I'm super glad that you're already doing the cars, and I think this is like a great next movement step. So I'm excited. Kirsty, you're actually on a plane right now. That is awesome. Well, I'm super excited to welcome you. I am going to be here to support you throughout. So that's awesome. Crystal, yes, it's in the Move Better, Live Better group. That's where everything's going to be posted. I just assumed everyone is in here watching, but we'll put it in there. You can also email me. Hi, Adele. So yeah, we'll have that in there. Oh, Arizona. What an awesome name. I love it. Oh, great question. Is that Aristia? That's a beautiful name too. After you finish the program, how often do you need to do the exercises? I don't know the answer to that question. I do most of the exercises pretty often, one way or another, kind of like they're vitamins. And you definitely you're not gonna stay better for the most part unless you keep moving in new ways. So because this is more like a nutritional supplement than it is like I don't know, I'll say surgery, you have to keep doing it to some degree, but what that means can change. So for example, when I was learning to improve my squat, I had to do the squat prep exercises a lot. I had to work on my hip mobility a lot. I had to really focus on that. Now that I've gained that hip mobility, I can have a resting squat easily without having to practice all those exercises. So you can use some of the exercises as stepping stones. Or another example is you're going to learn how to do something called 360-degree breathing. That is a more rib mobility focused type of breathing that will give you optimal diaphragm expansion, which is going to give you an optimal relationship between your diaphragm and your pelvic floor. Once you practice that breathing, once you've got the rib mobility, once you have that as a default pattern, you never have to practice it again, or you can practice it once every 3 weeks just to check in. It's not an often check-in kind of thing. But Walking is a really essential pelvic floor exercise, especially once you have better walking technique. And one of the things we're going to work on a lot in the program is your walking technique. And when I work on walking technique, it's less about telling you, strike with your heel, push down through your toes. It's more about helping you work on the capacity for your walking. So helping you get more hip mobility, helping you get more strength in your hip, helping you get more rotation in your hip, helping you get more mobility in your feet. Once you have all of that stuff, once you've done those exercises, then just your walking is going to become more and more of a pelvic floor exercise. So less time exercising, more time walking. So there's a balance. But I will not lie, like my secret agenda is to get you to move more. Like if you go from doing this program back to sitting at a desk 24 hours a day, you are not going to maintain your results. So the idea is to help you enrich your life with more movement. And I will give you as many tools as possible. And I don't know what the optimal frequency of doing the exercises will end up being for you, but it won't be all the time. So I try to do a class or some exercises every day. Because that's just good for you. That's what your bodies, our bodies need. But sometimes that means I'm standing at my standing desk doing some squats and rolling my foot on a ball, not necessarily watching a whole class. So with this stuff, it's usually you want to have quite a lot of it. My post today on Instagram, I don't know if you're on Instagram, but I tried to illustrate some of the kind of daily life activities that help you use these movements. So, putting your hand on your door frame and getting a little bit of a shoulder stretch like that you can do every time you go through a door. It doesn't take a lot of time, but it gives your body a lot of movement nutrition. So there's no perfect frequency to this stuff. I don't think anyone's figured that out. This is new. But enriching your life with more of it rather than less of it is going to be beneficial. If you learn to sit on the floor in comfort, then you are going to keep a lot of hip mobility and strength without needing to do any extra work. So, or take any extra time, I guess I should say. So the more you do the lifestyle stuff, the less you need to do the exercise stuff. And then it's a balance and it's about what works for you and it's about monitoring. So if your symptoms get worse again, then you add a little bit more. If your symptoms stay good, then you can probably add on. It's progressive. So I'm going to teach you core bracing techniques that you can start using when you load your core. You're going to move past the core exercises I'm teaching in the program to do something harder, but you're going to have that exercise to use as you start doing other stuff. So the idea is this is a building block and not the end of the story. So hopefully that makes sense. All right. Oh yeah, for sure, Arizona. Let us get rid of the leakage and the urgency. And you know what? I've had all of it, and it's really nice when you start to get beyond it. Every so often it creeps back a little bit, and I'm always like, oh no. But this is the best way I've found to manage it and change it. And I think the new tools I'm learning and that I'm going to be sharing are going to be super useful for that too. So I'm really excited about that being in the program now. Okay. I'm here. Get those last questions in because I don't want to keep you all night. I promise not to be super overtime. I don't want to make you bored by watching Zoom all night. But thank you so much for joining me, everybody. Ask your last questions or post them in the Facebook group because I'm around all week to answer questions. That's my main goal right now is helping you decide because the sale is pretty awesome. And so if you're thinking about it, it's a good time to jump on board. So hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, so we'll post this and we'll post the equipment list and we will also be posting that hips over heels exercise that I talked about at the beginning into the Move Better, Live Better group. You are welcome, Susan. I hope that's helpful. Yeah, for you that was an easy one because let's do bunion specific work for you. If you also have pelvic floor stuff, then it's a harder choice. But if your foot is your main issue, then do the foot program. All right, everyone, have an awesome night and reach out anytime if you have any other questions. Okay, hope to see you in the program. And if not, then I'll hope to see you around anyway. Okay, take care.